it's 2 months ago I put my very own son in my jail, sir. Again, I stress, I did not grab the bosom of the lady your client did. Why we are here today. But my reputation is not at stake. His reputation was at stake.
Right. You don't know whether Dr. Khan related the incident as being consensual or not?
Form?
I don't know.
Okay. Would that matter to you?
Form?
Nothing honestly mattered. I don't give a shit about the case honestly at all. I mean, it's the facts are presented and to the state just as any other case is done.
Your testimony is that you believe that you should, as law enforcement, look at all evidence.
Correct.
Okay. As the sheriff looking at this evidence, does it cause you any concern?
I'm not prepared once again to give you my opinion hastily while we sit here today, in this badgering that I'm receiving, sir.
Okay.
So if you got a complaint against the case officer, then there's a step in a process to do so, and it will be evaluated at that point if you let me finish, sir. Out of respect.
You're in the middle of a lawsuit against your office.
I understand, but I am speaking, and there is respect to be had here, Counselor.
Go ahead. Say whatever you want to say.
I'm done.
Okay. That's normally what happens, but you've told us in this case, for example, you called Dr. Khan personally. Is that fair to say?
After one of those briefings had been had.
Okay. You still felt it was appropriate to talk to a represented person on the phone?
Form?
I wasn't asking him any questions about the case. I considered him a friend, not a defendant at that point.
You called him from a phone that the sheriff has.
Because you don't understand the position of a rural county sheriff, let alone a sheriff, period, sir.
Well, I think you'd agree the rules are the same for rural counties, for Palm Beach County, for Broward, for all counties, for law enforcement, right?
I think it's, the rules, but as the world goes, I get involved in way more than I'd like to.
Before we get into this, is the Okeechobee County Sheriff's Office accredited?
No.
And why not?
We're in the process.
Hold on, buckle up, get your popcorn, get your favorite beverage, because I'm going to tell you right now, and there's going to be a part 3. There will be a part 3 to this. And I am telling you, it only gets crazier from here. It only gets crazier. So, you're not going to see me at the end, so I'm going to say it right now. Don't forget, hit that like, share, and that subscribe button. The links to the council, the commissioners meeting are in the description. If you want to show up, please, let's hold Okeechobee County Commission, Okeechobee County Sheriffs, and anybody else that's been doing shenanigans in Okeechobee. Let's hold them all accountable. And I'll see you on the next one. And I'm telling you, the next one gets even more wild. Soli Ecker, deuces.
Your conversations with her about Tony Bishop. It says here on 12/14/2019, there's a text from Ms. Chandler to you that, sorry to bother you on a Saturday, but I have a situation. Tony is saying that he's changed the locks and prepared to have me arrested if I return to get the rest of my stuff. My name is on the deed of the house and my mail still goes there. Can he do this? What would I be arrested for? Do you see that question she asked you?
Yes, sir.
And your response...
What's the subject, form, relevance?
So what I'm first of all, is this a typical question you get from a constituent? A question about whether you can be arrested?
Almost every other day.
Okay. And your response, and then she said, he said he will have me arrested if I return to the property. And your response is he can't. What is that based on?
I don't think that's my response.
Or excuse me, from Captain Jack Nash.
I don't think it's Captain Jack Nash.
Who's Jack Nash?
He's now a sergeant. I think he was just a deputy at that point.
Okay. Now, did you ever authorize Mr. Nash to give legal advice of this nature?
No, sir.
Okay. Were you familiar before this lawsuit that he had been giving her legal advice that's reflected in these text messages?
No, sir.
Okay. I'm going to refer you down to the text of 12/14/2019, where your response is, that's still marital abode and property. You have the right to be there.
Okay.
Now, is that you giving legal advice to Ms. Chandler?
I can't give legal advice.
Well, you told her she has a right to be there.
I give advice to folks when they're dealing with issues. That's what I do.
But you are the sheriff of Okeechobee County.
Correct.
That's the head law enforcement officer of Okeechobee County.
My first role in duty is a law enforcement officer.
So
in a rural community and being established 37 years now, I get asked all kinds of stuff every day.
Okay.
So that's what that's what a sheriff should do anywhere, let alone in a rural county.
So you're saying that it's appropriate for a sheriff in a rural county, to give legal advice of this nature?
That's not legal advice.
Well, you did tell her.
I'm just giving her advice on what the situation allows, whether it's domestic violence, whether it's property theft, whether it's burglary, whether it's just about anything. Anything you could think of, pull the Florida statute books. And it's in my position, in my involvement in the community, it comes down to how long do you cook a pork butt, and then everything in between, sir.
I understand. So that's still marital abode and property. That's your statement.
Form, you can answer.
Okay.
Is it?
It's in writing, sir.
And then you have the right to be there. You told her that as well.
Okay.
And were you, if you turn to page 18, were you familiar with whether Ms. Chandler was having conversations with someone named Antoinette Rodriguez regarding her telling Ms. Rodriguez that you were involved in the situation with her ex-husband?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
In the third paragraph down, she refers to, I didn't keep my word to you of moving on the 28th and removing my name from the deed. Do you ever recall a conversation before this text where she promised you she was going to move out on the 28th?
No, sir.
Okay. Now your response is on the next page, page 20, and it looks like your response is about 4 minutes later. I'll be praying for you and wishing you good health. Miss you, love you. See that response?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then she says, thank you, miss you, and love you. You see that as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sorry to bother you this late. My attorney just told me that I had to make a sexual assault complaint report tomorrow. Do I do that with you or who?
Did you know who her attorney was at that moment?
No, sir.
Okay. And then your response, could you read that?
Hello, lady. Either come to the office and see one or call one to the house, assuming it happened here.
Now, I noticed that you responded to her less than 3 minutes later. Is that normal for you to respond so quickly to a constituent's text?
Form.
All the time.
Okay. Do you know if prior to that date, May 5th, 2020, Ms. Chandler had ever had a conversation with you regarding an allegation by Dr. Kahn?
No, sir.
You don't recall or you don't know?
I don't recall.
Okay. I'm going to show you Exhibit 4 from the text messages and ask you if you recognize who that person is.
Oh, yes, sir.
Who is that?
Denise Grimsley.
And what was Ms. Grimsley doing with you?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I mean, it's hard to say.
And what does Ms. Grimsley do?
She was a nurse by profession. She was I think a representative and then maybe a senator at one time.
And was there any particular reason you would be with her that you can recall?
Most likely we're at a function together. It looks like the background is not my office. So I would say that once again, we're at a political function somewhere.
Okay. Your testimony, if I understand it, is you're not sure exactly when Ms. Chandler first reported to you that she had an incident with Dr. Kahn.
Okay.
Is that your testimony?
Okay.
Or can you recall when she
I don't
first?
recall, no, sir.
Okay. You don't know whether it's February 26th or May 5th or any date in between?
I don't recall, sir.
Okay. Now, these are text messages between you and her after she meets with a deputy at your office. I'm going to go through these with you. Now, do you recall having a conversation with her after she reported the incident about her name being placed out in the newspaper?
I don't recall.
Okay. On June 26, 2020, 2:53 p.m., according to this text, you say, hey, lady, state's doing a great job on your case. What did you mean by that?
Don't recall. I can only assume that something was printed in the paper and the case was moving forward.
Okay. But when you say the state, who are you referring to?
State Attorney's Office.
Did you have conversations before June 26, 2020 with them about her allegations?
Never had conversations that I recall.
Then her text to you is 8 more ladies have come forward. Do you see that?
Okay.
And then you respond, and a couple to city. What did you mean by that?
Just reading the text that you're showing me here, I think at that point there was some movement with the case with outside other victims, according to what was stated in the paper, and what I'd heard coming from the city police department.
And when you say you heard, who told you that there were a couple from the city?
I don't recall. Rumor mill goes, and this was a pretty significant case with the two of them, so there was gossip and chatter going on all over the place.
If you turn to page 2, on June 24th, there's a text to you, or you send a text, arrest made out paper today. And then a response, I saw it, thank you. They just released another story online too, and there's looks like a picture of your local news. It says a local doctor accused of assaulting woman. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
So did you text her that her arrest made the paper?
Correct. I would assume that based on what we were reading.
Okay. And why were you continuing a conversation with her about the case?
She's a friend,
Okay.
just like Dr. Kahn's a friend.
I understand that. And you actually testified in his trial that she was the same type of friend as Dr. Kahn was.
Correct.
But we now know that's not true,
Objection form.
correct?
Okay.
Well, you were different types of friends. You would agree?
I don't. I tell Dr. Kahn I love him.
Did you ever send him?
I'll object to the form. There was an order that he was not allowed to talk about the text messages in that trial. So that question was in the context of he can't go to the text message road.
Right. But this testimony is still improper. It was wrong. That you testified at that trial that you knew Dr. Kahn, no differently than you knew Ms. Chandler, but that wasn't the truth.
Form, argumentative. You can answer.
Okay. But your client's the one that grabbed Miss Chandler's breast, not I.
Well, according
That's
to
why we're here today.
Well, according to her.
According to him.
No, that's not what he said.
So spin it however you want to, counselor. Let's move forward.
It's not a spin, it's the truth. So the question I'm asking you is, you said just you know Dr. Kahn exactly as you know Ms. Chandler, but that is not correct.
Form.
You know Ms. Chandler in a different way than you know Dr. Kahn.
I wouldn't say that.
Form asked and answered.
Could you point to any text message you ever sent to Dr. Kahn that was sexual in nature?
I don't know that we're talking about. We're just talking flirtatious. I mean, you know. I mean, it's I called Dr. Kahn and told him that we had warrant for him. You know, out of courtesy, as a friendship.
Well, we're gonna get to that.
You know,
Okay, we'll get to that
I mean,
in a
it's all relevant, Counselor.
Okay, we'll get to that in a moment. Let's get back to our Exhibit 5. Not to get off track, so we're not here all day. So there's a conversation back and forth, and she basically says to you, let's go to page 4, I think it's a little easier to read. Do you recall a conversation that you had with her regarding trying to make changes to her written statement?
I don't recall.
Okay. Do you ever recall texting her at the top of page 4 of this exhibit, no changes can be made, corrections and amendments can happen in supplemental form. Javier can do that if he agrees with your changes.
That's standard. That's law. That's the way things go.
Okay. So is that fair to say that would be your statement?
Sounds like it, yes, sir.
Okay. At the bottom of page 4, you say no changes. Your civil attorney has all he or she needs. Who is her civil attorney?
No clue.
Well, why would you refer to a civil attorney if you don't know who it is?
Well, I don't have a clue. I mean, when you read the statements and what she's trying to say, you know, her criminal attorney is a state attorney. So, you know, I must have taken what she was trying to text or change to be on the civil side.
Well, so it would be fair to say at that point you knew she had a civil lawyer handling a civil case.
It's possible.
Okay. And you knew at that moment in time that she was suing Dr. Kahn for civil damages.
Form, you can answer.
All mere speculation. I don't recall.
Okay. You can't recall if she was suing.
I can't recall the conversation, sir.
Okay. But you knew for sure she had a civil attorney based on your text.
I don't know that for sure, no, sir.
Well, you wouldn't lie to her in a text, would you?
I don't know, sir.
You may lie to her in a text?
I don't know.
Okay. So you're just not sure what you meant when you said your civil attorney?
No, sir.
Okay. Then on page 5, there is a Facebook post from Dr. Kahn that she shared with you. And this was July 19, 2020. And in this Facebook post, he states that he's vigorously contesting the allegations and will be exonerated at trial. My accuser is demanding money and she's retained lawyers from New York. So you'd agree you read this text message she sent you on this Facebook post?
I must have bruised it, yes, sir.
Okay, so you're at least on notice at that point that she's suing him with lawyers from New York.
Form.
Okay.
Because you say interesting. Is that what
Okay.
you say? Okay. So you've seen his response on Facebook.
And based on my answer, I must have really been into it.
Okay. So you were really reading it.
I don't know. I mean, based on, I would say that my answer plays off the what she's trying to drag me into by merely saying interesting and leaving it alone.
One other note, I don't know how you do your job. If I knew then what I know now, I would have never come forward with this case. Man has beat me up terribly, very, very stressful. And then what was your response?
Based on the text message, our system dang sure is not in the favor of the victim.
And what do you mean by that?
Have you ever done any criminal law?
For 30 years.
Well, then you know well what I'm saying in this text message, in the he said, she said type of cases that we're here for today.
Right. You agree in a he said, she said case, the police do have an obligation to corroborate the he said and she said parts of the case.
Form.
I feel that our obligation is to take all the parties' information, good, bad, and indifferent, present it to the state, and and we've developed over time that we have the opportunity to PC to arrest somebody on probable cause. But we worked over the years in my 30-year career to the point now we consult with the prosecutors prior to charging, because of and especially in a profile case such as this, that we don't hastily charge, and we're all on the same page.
Okay. You did not review any of these texts beforehand?
Correct.
Okay. Now, on 5/5/20, do you see a text from Mr. DiLoretto to Ms. Chandler? Could you review that for a moment?
And I'll just subject to the form speculation opinion regarding something I had no knowledge of at the time.
Well, that's the point of the question, Sheriff. Is why did
Okay,
you...
I've read paragraph 107.
Okay, so first of all, your testimony is that you believe that you should, as law enforcement, look at all evidence.
Correct.
Okay. So here, would you agree that there's a conversation between the alleged victim, Ms. Chandler, and this other person named Fred, who's telling her basically how to respond to why there was a delay in reporting?
I have no opinion on what was done and not done. Once again, all this information is turned in to the detectives, to the prosecutors. It's their responsibility and obligation to review the documents. Okay. I haven't been asked to review anything, nor am I prepared to review anything or give you my opinion at this point.
Well, the question is, you're the sheriff, right? And you have a deputy underneath you that you assign to this case at some point.
Okay.
Okay. That deputy has a duty and obligation to look at all the evidence.
Correct.
So I'm asking you, as the sheriff, looking at this evidence, does it cause you any concern?
I'm
Objection
not
form.
prepared, once again, to give you my opinion hastily while we sit here today, in this badgering that I'm receiving, sir.
Okay.
So if you got a complaint against the case officer, then there's a step in a process to do so.
And
And it will be evaluated at that point
Sir,
if you let me finish,
Well,
sir, out of
You're in the
respect.
middle of a lawsuit against your office.
I understand, but I am
against you.
speaking, and there is respect to be had here,
Go
Counselor.
ahead, say whatever you want to say.
I'm done.
Okay, so the question is this. Tell them the reason you've hesitated to report it, quote unquote, his influence in the community, but the sleepless night and shitty dreams, along with wanting to prevent this from happening to others, prompted reporting it now. You see that cue?
Okay.
Okay. Now, as a law enforcement officer, you would agree that you would want to know any conversations that the alleged victim had about the incident with others.
Form, speculation.
I mean, isn't that part of your investigation you just told us about?
I have no opinion, sir.
But
Hold on. You haven't established that he investigated anything.
I'm getting there.
Okay. I think you should get there first, Al.
Well, okay, simple as this.
I mean, you're asking him to speculate and give opinions about investigations in general, and in particular, an investigation that he had nothing to do with.
Well, that's his opinion. He had nothing to do with it. Okay, that's why we're here. That's why you're sued individually.
He's already said he didn't.
And
read
it's your
any of
duty.
these.
It's your duty to prove, sir.
I did not. I'm not saying he read it. I'm not saying you read. Whether you read it or not, that's your prerogative. Okay. You do what
This
you
is a
want.
conversation I had nothing to do with.
I'm not saying you had anything to do with the conversation. What I'm asking you, the first question is, obviously you didn't look at this conversation at any point.
Correct.
Okay. And secondly, you would agree, though, that your deputy should probably look at conversations that the alleged victim has about the crime.
Form.
What I will say again is that all documentation such as this needs to be presented to the state attorney's office for review.
But what about also to your deputies? Don't they have an obligation to review it?
Once
Form
again,
argumentative. You haven't established that he knows he didn't look at it. I don't understand where you're going.
Okay, so for example, I'll ask you this. Detective Gonzalez gave us his testimony 3 or 4 weeks ago. He stated he met with you personally on this case and reviewed the evidence. Is that true or not?
we correct to a point. We're talking 30,000 foot level review. I don't have the time to get into the specifics of this case. I don't have the time to read what you're asking me to give my opinion on right now. He just basically comes in and tells me this case is moving forward. He had done this, he had done that. They're presented to the state attorney. We're talking less than 10 minutes, and he's gone.
So your first meeting with Detective Gonzalez was about what topic?
Well, I don't really recall. I mean, what normally happens in these type of situations is the investigator that gets assigned will come and brief me, or their supervisor will, 2 or 3 times as this case moves forward. And once again, those 5-10 minute briefings, just so I'm aware of what's going on. And that's normally what happens.
Okay, so I agree, that's normally what happens. But you've told us in this case, for example, you called Dr. Khan personally. Is that fair to say?
After one of those briefings had been had.
Okay. Do you recall making an actual call to Dr. Khan on May 29, 2020 in the presence of Detective Gonzalez?
No, sir.
Okay. So you can't recall making this call?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, is your phone number 863? Is that your phone number?
That 0650 is.
Okay.
I'm just going to object to the authenticity of this document.
It's not being introduced in a trial. We're just using it to refresh a recollection right now. Okay, so we got Exhibit 6. Now, there's an incoming call. You agree that that's your phone number. Now, and I really appreciate if you would not make loud comments when I'm trying to ask questions. Thank you, Ms. Gisa. So Detective Gonzalez told us he sat down with you in his office and you together called Dr. Khan. Can you independently recall making a call?
No, sir.
Now, earlier in today's deposition, you told me that you called Dr. Khan to tell him he was going to be arrested. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
So you do recall making the call.
Well, I don't, through the course of this investigation, I recall the fact that out of one of the briefings that I had with Detective Gonzalez, the warrants were going to be issued for Dr. Khan. So out of friendship and courtesy, and what I normally do as a general practice is call folks that I know that I'm friends with and let them know, come turn yourself in. There's a warrant, so an officer does not go to his business and embarrass him any more than what has to be done.
Okay. So you're saying that's the reason you decided to call?
More than likely, yes, sir.
Okay. And you don't know how long you talked to him on the phone for?
I have no recollection, sir.
Okay. And did you recall making a call then to Dr. Khan on September 24th, 2020? Look down at the record.
Based on everything that we've been through on this case and what's been alleged and allegated and made up and twisted or whatever, I do recall that there was a newspaper article that was written and submitted in the local paper. Something was said that I did not like that came from Dr. Khan, and I called Dr. Khan and voiced my dislike about what was stated in the paper by him.
Now, you know that Dr. Khan was charged with 2 crimes at that point.
Correct.
And you knew he was represented by a lawyer.
Correct.
And you knew that at that point, proceedings had been commenced against him by the Department of Health.
No, sir.
Okay, we'll get back to that in a minute. You still felt it was appropriate to talk to a represented person on the phone?
Form.
I wasn't asking him any questions about the case. I considered him a friend, not a defendant at that point.
Okay, but he was a defendant.
He was a friend.
But he was a defendant.
He was
as well.
first a friend.
But he was a defendant in 2 cases that your office was
He
prosecuting.
was more a friend than a defendant, sir.
Okay, fine. But your office, you agree, deputies in your office were investigating him for crimes.
Correct.
And he had been charged at this point with
Correct.
crimes.
Correct.
And you knew that one of the consequences of being charged with a crime is you can lose your life or liberty, right?
Correct.
Okay. Your reputation's at stake.
I don't try cases across my desk. My reputation is not at stake. His reputation was at stake.
Right. You understood that very well at that moment.
Anybody does.
And you understood that he had a practice in Okeechobee County that was a very busy practice.
He was a doctor for 30 years. He and I been around long enough that he had clients, or patients, whatever you want to refer to them as, whom he knew their kids, he knew their parents, he knew their uncles and aunts, as I did in a small rural county. That's what we do.
Okay.
He and I had met many times talking about other people, trying to help them over the years.
And it was your testimony that you said you didn't know of a Department of Health proceeding against Dr. Khan?
Correct.
Okay. So if we could let's go to page 22 of this document for a moment.
Okay.
Okay, so Mrs. Chandler basically tells you, first of all, I'm thankful they restricted his license for 8 months. Do you see that?
Okay.
So you knew his license was restricted?
I didn't know.
Do you have any reason to believe Ms. Chandler was lying to you at that moment?
I could tell by my answer, my selective hearing, whatever she said. Okay.
Okay. And you told her she's doing the right thing.
Okay.
Okay. And she actually says the reason it was lifted was because they said they couldn't confirm I was his patient at the time of the incident. Do you see that?
Okay.
Do you know at the time of this incident whether Ms. Chandler was Dr. Khan's patient or not?
No, sir.
You don't know?
I don't know.
Do you know whether she had ever told anyone that she was his patient?
I don't know.
Okay. First of all, you say trying to reach Javi, J-A-V-Y. Who's Javi?
How about Javi?
Javi. Who is that?
That's short for Javier.
Okay. Who's Javier?
Javier Gonzalez, that's the case investigator on this case.
Okay. So why were you trying to reach him?
She's asking me for an update.
Okay. So you would agree you were having contact, at least at that moment, with Mr. Gonzalez?
Yes, sir, and I think it reflects how much I was really up on the case because I had to check with the investigator to figure out where the update was at.
Okay. So but you did figure out the update at some point?
I guess I did because I texted her back, as
Okay.
you can read in the text.
Right. You said Javi has been speaking with prosecutor and interview scheduled with Dr. Khan on Wednesday, I believe.
Which
No.
I didn't know at the time she had asked me the question, but I guess evidently investigator Gonzalez had updated me on that.
And you said not sure why state won't sign warrant.
Okay.
And what was that based on?
Don't have a clue. I guess something Javi said.
Okay. Did you have any update meetings with Detective Gonzalez in your office about this case after the first time you made the call to Dr. Khan about warning him that he was going to be arrested?
I don't know that we had maybe 3 or 4, as I stated, I think earlier, updates on this case. All of which happened in my office, all of which are probably no more than 5 or 10 minutes, if that long. But I don't recall specifically any dates, times, specifics.
Now, did you at some point have a discussion with Detective Gonzalez about these additional victims who've come forward?
I don't recall. I don't think we ever did.
Did you ever have a discussion with Ms. Chandler about additional victims come forward?
I think we already talked about, and you showed me some text messages about that.
Let's go to page 11 of this exhibit.
Page 11?
Yes. So on page 11, now you said that the conversation needs to happen and you need to request a victim's advocate. What did you mean by that when you were talking to her?
Based on what I'm reading, not recalling exact conversation, but because of her questions that she has in regards to this case, it's not my case, it's not my place to give her legal advice. She needs to go to the victim's advocate, who is the appropriate person to walk her through and give her the information that she needs.
Okay. Now you've given her legal advice in the past, however, you agree.
Form.
To a domestic situation, nothing as significant or severe as this.
Okay. Then if you turn to the next page, page 12. One last question. How will I know when he's been arrested? And your response was misdemeanor battery. Yes, they can be elevated. He'll be arrested tonight. So how did you know, where did you gather that information to be able to respond that way?
I can only assume, based on what I'm reading, that was probably in the same timeline as the call to Dr. Khan, one of the calls that I had to him, and he had already told me that he'd be in that evening.
The next page, on page 13, July 6, 2020 at 12:53, you were receiving a text that says, Dina Campbell called last night. She met with Javier today. I think that makes 11. What was your response?
Nonchalantly, not feeding into what she is. I'm, okay.
What did you say?
I said, see the good you caused, proud of it.
Okay. So you're telling her, if I understand this, that you're proud of her having found 11 other victims? including
No, I
Tina
would say
Campbell?
that that's a, as you quoted before, having knowledge and experience in this, the struggles that these victims go through, and to stand up for herself is probably what I'm referring to, sir.
Well, but you also know in all your careers in law enforcement that victims lie.
Form.
True, but in this case, they had already been supported by the state to file charges. So, it's once again, it's a he said, she said. It's who, sadly, is more believable in all actuality in these cases.
Now, in this particular case, are you aware of a controlled call that was set up between Ms. Chandler and Dr. Khan?
Form, you can answer.
I do initially believe that there was initially the detective had done a control call to establish believability and probable cause, or facts in this case, which is normal practice. But I had nothing to do with the call.
Do you recall what the results of that controlled call were?
I never watched any video, no audio, never read any reports. I don't have a clue.
Okay. You don't know whether Dr. Khan related the incident as being consensual or not?
Form.
I don't know.
Okay. Would that matter to you?
Form.
Nothing honestly mattered. I don't give a shit about the case honestly at all. I mean, it's the facts are presented and to the state just as any other case is done,
Okay.
and established from them. I have nothing to do with it.
Okay. Now, you did care about Ms. Chandler, though, didn't you?
As I did about Dr. Khan.
Well, Dr. Khan had a trial. Do you recall an actual criminal trial that you testified in?
Vaguely.
Okay. Well, then let's help you refresh your recollection. Okay, I'm showing you an excerpt of the transcript of a criminal trial, State of Florida versus Saeed Khan, that took place on the 10th day of August 2021. If you turn to the second page, there's a reference to you. It says direct examination by Mr. Reagan, page 175. So if we go to page 175, if you look at that for a moment, you were asked the question, do you know a Teresa Chandler? Can you look at your response? The question was, do you know a Teresa Chandler? And then if you turn to page 177, you were asked, how do you define the relationship between you and Ms. Bishop? And can you tell us what your answer was?
Professional and friends.
Okay. Then you were asked whether you recalled getting a text in May of 2020 from Ms. Bishop. And your answer then was no?
Correct.
Okay. And then you were asked specifically about me, the text message, and your answer was vaguely recall the conversation. You see that?
Where at?
Bottom of page 177.
About me, about you?
No, read about page 177. It says, do you remember getting a text message from Ms. Bishop? And your answer was vaguely recall that conversation. Do you see that?
Okay.
Okay. To this day, can you recall the conversation, the initial conversation?
Other than just what we've talked about between my counsel and then here this morning, vaguely, once again, remember any of this.
And then at the bottom of page 178, you were asked, but you do have a friendship with her, don't you? And the answer was with both parties, yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay. And then the question was, well, we'll go into Dr. Khan in a second, but with her, it's more than just one of the people from your county. You've worked with her on a board, you've communicated with her over several years, and you said your answer was no different than the relationship with your client, sir.
Okay.
Okay, you'd agree that that is not a correct statement.
Objection form, asked and answered.
I don't think so.
Why not?
Because they're both friends of mine.
But were the relationships the same?
No relationship's the same.
Okay. But you said that they were the same. You
Well,
said no different
well,
than
when you get specific, counselor, there's I'm friends with the counselor here and the counselor there. They're different.
Okay.
I am friends with Miss Chandler.
Right.
So I'm helping her with this case as I'm friends with your client, counselor. Hence why I called him to save him any embarrassment, to let him come turn himself in, which I think you will agree is not general practice from a law enforcement officer that you've dealt with, let alone a sheriff.
Well, you did consider.
Is that correct, counselor?
Well, you consider.
Is that correct? I'm just asking a question. Yes or no?
You don't get to ask me questions.
Oh, well, I mean, out of respect, I feel that, we would give that to each other.
Well, the thing is this, you did consider this case to be different than the typical case.
Form, you can answer.
Yes, I agree with that. It was a high-profile case due to the clients.
And you knew Dr. Khan's reputation in the community was very important to him.
Form, you can answer.
I think that both parties' representation and establishment in the community was very important.
And you also had no problem calling Dr. Khan, even after you warned him about the arrest, to complain about, you said something in the paper.
Agree.
Okay. And when you called him, he knew you were the sheriff. Obviously, you're the sheriff of Okeechobee County, right?
But I'm not calling him as a sheriff.
But you are the sheriff.
But I didn't have that sheriff hat on. I was calling him as that friend that I'm alluding to.
Well, but you called him from a phone that the sheriff has.
Because you don't understand the position of a rural county sheriff, let alone a sheriff, period, sir.
Well, I think you'd agree the rules are the same for rural counties, for Palm Beach County, for Broward, for all counties, for law enforcement, right?
I think it's, the rules, but as the world goes, I get involved in way more than I'd like to, but that's what rural county sheriffs do.
So you're telling us you were heavily involved in this case?
Form.
More than I wanted to be. Hence why I called your client and told him that he had a warrant out of respect for our friendship.
And in the past, had you ever referred out a case involving somebody you knew very well to like an outside agency, such as FDLE or another county?
If you're referring to conflicts, it's very seldom that we conflict out on a case. If I didn't investigate cases involving people that we knew, then we wouldn't be able to do our jobs. So what we do is we make sure there's no direct connection between the case agent doing the investigation in any time possible. That just because it causes issues that we do not need, especially in cases such as this.
But in this case, there was direct connection between you and the case agent, Detective Gonzalez.
Which is not unusual.
Okay. And then Detective Gonzalez had direct connection with Ms. Chandler.
It's 2 months ago I put my very own son in my jail, sir. So if you really want to get down to particulars, we can go there. Okay? I mean, that's just because, I've got a job I've got to do, and I have done it very well. Hence the reputation that I have for 37 years of being the sheriff of Okeechobee County, and I stand by that. Once again, I stress, I did not grab the bosom of the lady your client did. Why we are here today. But had that not happened, we would not be here today.
But sir, the truth of the matter is you don't know whether he actually touched her.
I do believe he admitted that he did.
You don't know whether it was consensual or not.
To the best of my recollection, I think that I do.
Of course, because you're looking at it from the perspective of law enforcement.
No different than you are looking at the perspective, hence why we're here in this lawsuit today, sir.
Right, but isn't your job to gather the evidence?
Form. He wasn't involved in
if I'm the case agent, but I did not, that duty was passed along for somebody else to do.
Okay, your answers earlier to how investigations are done. You'd agree that this is generally the policy of the Okeechobee County Sheriff's Office for criminal investigations, which is marked as Exhibit 8?
Correct.
Okay. Before we get into this, is the Okeechobee County Sheriff's Office accredited?
No,
And why not?
we're in the process.
Okay. How long have you been in the process for accreditation?
I'm due to get accredited officially June of this year.
And what does accreditation mean?
It's a standard, with the policies, the way we do our jobs, dotting your I's, crossing your T's, as the old analogy goes, having oversight from a group of inspectors, holding ourselves to a higher level.
Okay.